SOS Audio presents The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya fan audiobook, written by Nagaru Tanigawa. Chapter 4. What kind of joke is this? Asking us to meet at 9 in the morning on a weekend? Despite that, I still pedaled hard on my bike towards the station. I'm so hopeless. Being located in the center of town, Kitaguchi Station acts as an important railway hub, and every weekend the square in front of the station is packed with window shopping youngsters. Apart from going to a larger city, there's really not much to do in this town besides going to the mall near the station. It always amazes me how people can live normal lives in this town with so little to do. Randomly placing my bike at the closed entrance to the bank, I ran to the turnstiles on the north entrance of the station. It was still 5 minutes to 9, but everyone else had already arrived. Haruhi turned her head and said,
"You're late! You've got to be fined!"
"But it's not even 9 yet!"
"Even if you didn't arrive late, the last person to arrive still has to be punished. That's the rule."
"How come I never heard that rule before?"
"Because I just thought it up."
Dressed in a long-sleeve t-shirt and a short denim skirt, Haruhi looked very cheerful.
"You'll have to treat all of us to drinks."
Placing her arms on her waist with ease, Haruhi looked much more approachable than her usual scowling self. Unable to argue, I obligingly agreed to her command and led everyone to a nearby cafe. Asahina was dressed in a white sleeveless one-piece dress with a light blue knitted shirt on top. Her long wavy hair was clipped at the back of her head with a hair clip. Every time she moved, it would bounce slightly, making her look very cute. Her smile gave her an impression of a well-cultured young lady. Even her handbag looked trendy. Standing next to me, Koizumi wore a pink shirt with a jacket on top, as well as sporting a bright red necktie, making him look very formal. I was irritated, but had to admit, he looked rather cool. Plus, he's taller than me. Nagato, as usual, stood in the back wearing her sailor uniform. Even though she completely viewed herself as a member of the SOS Brigade, technically she was still with the literature club. Hearing her say all the strange things to me the other night made me even more concerned about her cool expression. By the way, why is she wearing a school uniform even on the weekends? As the mysterious five walked into the cafe by the roundabout and sat down in our chairs, the waitress started taking our orders. Only Nagato studied the menu seriously, still no expression displayed of course, taking her time to decide. Honestly, the time it took for her to decide on what to drink was enough to cook a bowl of ramen.
Almond tea.
Finally. It doesn't matter what you order anyway, I'm the one who has to pay for it. Haruhi made the following suggestions. We would split into 2 parties. If any of us were to find anything that looked mysterious, we were to contact each other at once by cell phone, then meet up to discuss what to do next. Once it was all over, a debriefing would be held to review and prepare for further developments. That was all.
"Now, let's draw lots."
Haruhi took 5 toothpicks from a toothpick stand. Then, using a pen she borrowed from the waitress, she marked 2 of the toothpicks. She then wrapped her fingers around the toothpicks for us to draw. I drew a marked one. So did Asahina. For some reason, Haruhi coldly glared at me and Asahina and then yelled,
"Kyon, you listen. This is not a date. Be serious, you understand?"
"Okay already!" Did I just show my thoughts to her? Nevertheless, this is great! I danced with joy inside as I saw Asahina stare at the toothpick, blushing furiously. Yes!
What exactly are we looking for?
Koizumi said this nonchalantly while Nagato drank her tea methodically. Finishing her last drop of iced coffee, Haruhi lightly flicked the hair behind her ears.
"Anything that looks suspicious. Anything or anyone that looks funny. Also, look for portals that can lead to different dimensions and aliens disguised as humans."
I nearly spat out the mint tea I was drinking. That's strange. Why does Asahina have the same expression? Of course, Nagato remains the same as always.
I see.
Are you sure you really understand?
So, all we need to do is look for aliens, time travelers, and espers with supernatural powers and the traces they left behind on Earth. I fully understand.
"That's right! You really are a bright person, Koizumi. It's just like you said. Kyon, you should learn from him."
Stop feeding her ego! Annoyed, I looked at Koizumi, who only smiled back at me and nodded.
"All right, let's go."
Haruhi shoved the bill at me and strode out of the cafe. Although I've said this many times before, I've still got to say it. Oh boy.
Remember, this is not a date. If I find you going off to have fun with her, I'll kill you.
So Haruhi said, going off with Koizumi and Nagato. We headed east and west, respectively. I still don't know what it is we're supposed to be looking for.
What should we do?
Asahina looked at me, clutching her bag with her hands. I wanted to go home, but I knew that was impossible. So I pretended to think for a while before saying, it's pointless just standing around here, so let's walk around.
Okay.
Asahina obligingly walked with me. She was hesitant when walking with me shoulder to shoulder. Every time she accidentally bumped into my shoulder, she would recoil shyly. She looked so innocent like that. We followed a path by the riverbank and aimlessly headed north. If we had come a month ago, we could have enjoyed the blooming of the cherry blossom trees, but now it's just a plain riverside walk. As this was a popular spot for walking, there were many families and couples walking as well. If one didn't know any better, they would think we were a young couple and not a group looking for something mysterious. Looking at the riverside, Asahina murmured softly to herself.
This is the first time I've had a walk like this.
What do you mean?
That is, with a guy. Just the two of us.
That really surprises me. Could it be that you've never gone out with a guy before?
No.
I turned towards Asahina, whose soft hair was lightly fluttering in the wind, and said, Wow, but there are plenty of guys who have confessed to you, right? Asahina shyly lowered her head.
But it can't work. I can't involve myself in a relationship with anyone. At least not at this time.
She suddenly went quiet. As I waited for her to continue, 3 happy couples walked by.
Yeon-kun.
I was already counting the number of leaves that had fallen into the river when Asahina called to me. Asahina looked at me abashedly, and then, bracing herself, she said,
I have something to tell you.
Her round, deer-like eyes revealed her strong determination. We sat on a bench by the cherry blossom trees, and for a long time, Asahina didn't speak. She lowered her head and muttered,
Where should I begin? I'm not good at explaining things. Maybe he won't believe me.
Finally, she lifted her head and started talking in a slightly embarrassed tone.
I'm not from this time and age. I am a person from the future. I can't tell you when I arrived from, or from which temporal plane. I wouldn't be able to anyway, even if I wanted to. Conveying any information regarding the future with any person from the past is strictly forbidden, and that's why, before boarding the time machine, I had to go through stringent mental conditioning. If I intended to say anything that shouldn't be said, my memory concerning that information would be sealed.
You lost me from the beginning.
How about this? Try to imagine it like a cartoon. When we're watching a cartoon, we see the characters within move seamlessly, but in fact, they're all created from a series of still images. Similarly, time is like that, a digitized version. But if I use a series of still images as a description, maybe you'll understand better. Between one time frame and another, there are so-called temporal fault lines. They do exist even though the frequency of the fault lines is near zero, so there is no continuity between different time frames. Time traveling is the attempt to make a three-dimensional movement between the two-dimensional temporal planes. For me, who has arrived from the future to this temporal plane, it is like adding an extra object drawn to the still image. Even if I attempt to change history in this age, it would not affect the future, because there is no continuity between the time frames. Everything would stay in this temporal plane. It's like trying to add a few words on a still image from hundreds of still images. The overall story wouldn't be affected, right? Time is unlike this river here. Every moment belongs to a digitized temporal plane. Are you following me now?
I hesitated on whether or not to place my hand on my forehead, which I eventually did. Temporal plane? Digitized? These terms just don't matter to me. But what's with the time traveling? Asahina glanced at the toes on her sandals and continued.
Let me tell you the reason I've come to this temporal plane.
A couple with a young child passed us at this moment.
3 years ago, we detected the occurrence of a huge timequake. It should be around 3 years before today, just when Suzumiya-san entered junior high. We were shocked when we traveled back to investigate because we were unable to travel any further into the past.
How come it's 3 years ago again?
We came to a conclusion that there exists a massive temporal fault line, but we don't know why it only appears at that specific time frame. It's only recently that we discovered the reason. Sorry, I meant recently for the age that I come from.
And why is that? The culprit couldn't be her, could it?
It's because of Suzumiya-san.